Alright, welcome to the Fusion 360 Basics tutorial to get us up and running in Fusion 360. And on the screen, what you are looking at are two cubes that I hope to have you draw in order to learn the basic skills you need to learn to move forward. And so, where should we begin? Well, of course, you won't have this on your screen. So what you're going to do is you're going to, well, I will make mine look like yours. When you open Fusion 360, it'll look like this. And the first thing you should do, because my project is currently unsaved and untitled, is we should save. Seems strange, we have nothing to save, but it's the first thing we should do. So we're going to hit this button up here called Save. And when you click that, you're going to get into the Save dialog box. You might move it around like I am by clicking on it and moving it up. And what we're going to do is create a location. So on this down arrow, you're probably going to have a couple. I have a lot because I have a lot of projects going on, but you have like admin and something else. We're going to make our first project. So you're going to push this up if you need to. And at the bottom, you can see new project. And think of a project like a folder in which you could keep all of your Fusion 360 files. That's the best way to describe it. And what we've got here is it's asking for a name after I said new project. So I'm going to call this engineering. You call yours something appropriate. Engineering tutorial. There we go. And I'm going to hit save. And it will reorganize these alphabetically. And after it's done that, you can see it's down here. When I click on it, it will change the location to engineering tutorial. And you can see I have no files in engineering tutorial yet, so I'm going to create my first one, and we'll call this basics tutorial. There we go. So that's it. Now when I hit save, you'll see that up here, the title of the window I'm working on is now basics tutorial. The title of my browser tree, they call it, is basics tutorial. And the last thing is, where did it save to? Well, that's this data panel up here. If you click the data panel, you'll open up and you'll see all of your projects over here, all projects. And you have one now called, well, I have one called engineering tutorial. Yours will be what you call it. And inside is the file I'm working on called basics tutorial. There it is. So I'm going to close my data panel right now, but that's how you'll get to it another day when you want to open it up. Back to the blank screen, and remember we're trying to make this. Notice I don't even have it saved yet, so I'm hoping to save this one when I'm done. So the question is where to begin. Usually you want to do a little setup before you start, make sure everything's okay. So the thing we want to set up right now for this is the document settings. You're going to click on that arrow. You're going to hover to the end of the units and click this little piece of paper with a pencil, and you'll check and make sure that you're in inches. I obviously saw that I was in inches right there. But the millimeters are an option. You can change these on the fly at any point when you're working, but we're going to start in inches. And so that's what I've got. That's good. Hopefully yours is the same now. Next step, how do you begin drawing in Fusion 360? Well, you grab this button up here called Create a Sketch. If you don't see the button, it will be underneath Create. There's Create a Sketch. So pick Create Sketch. A sketch in Fusion 360 is a two-dimensional drawing that you're going to make. Remember, this is a 3D modeling program, but it all begins with a 2D drawing. So what we're going to do is pick a surface to sketch on. As soon as I picked Create a Sketch, I was presented with the origin for my sketch, and these things which are called planes. There's vertical, and there's a plane from above, and a back plane here, and they're all lined up with this thing called the view cube over here, X, Y, and Z directions. So the top plane, viewing from the top, would be to pick this plane right here. That's looking down from above, and that's the one you want to click on. So carefully click on that one, and you'll be suddenly transported somewhere else, and you'll know you're somewhere else because it says Finish Sketch up here. Whenever it says Finish Sketch, that means you're sketching. So now we're going to create our first sketch. Create is the menu, and down below it are all the options you have for drawing. You're going to pick rectangular, center rectangle, and then you're going to pick the point for the center rectangle. I'm going to pick this origin point right here. And now I pull. I didn't click, I just pulled. If you clicked, you might have to try again. Control Z is the way to undo anything you've done, and you can back up. So Control on your keyboard and Z at the same time. So I pulled, and now I can see that it's measuring the size of the cube, and if I push tab on my keyboard, I can go between the boxes and choose which one I want to draw, or change, I should say. So this one will be 2, and this one will be 2. So I tabbed back and forth and made it 2 inches by 2 inches and hit enter. Now, once I've hit enter, I see that it's black, which, by the way, means something is fully constrained in Fusion 360, which means it has all the information it needs. It doesn't need any more. And what I can do is I can click in the middle of it, and it's blue. And I hit E on my keyboard, and, well, I lost my blue, so I'll click one more time. And I am now in a 3D view with an arrow. And if I pull that arrow, and notice I don't have a sketch button anymore up here, so my sketch was automatically finished as soon as I said extrude because I'd moved into the 3D environment and I'm out of sketch. So now I'm pulling this into a 3D, well, I wanted a cube, so I better make it in the dialog box here 2 inches. Enter. There we are. So now I have a cube. And I just realized that maybe I was moving things around and I didn't go over the way in which you move things around very well. So I'll do that here now that I have a cube. So moving in and out, you just scroll with your mouse wheel and you point at whatever you want to zoom in on. So it will always go to where you're pointing. So I want that corner, or I want this corner, that sort of thing. The next thing is panning. If you hold your scroll wheel down on your mouse and move it around, you can pan from side to side. So it's like in the movies where they pan a scene from side to side. So that's now scrolling for zooming, panning by holding the scroll wheel down, and then the last one that is super important to master is to hold the shift key on your keyboard and the middle scroll wheel down. Your mouse will change to something called orbiting. And now I can look all around the cube, any side I want. And notice my view cube up here is showing me my orientation. So if I get lost, I can always go up here and there's a home button and it will take me to the standard isometric representation of my cube. You're like, what is he talking about? Anyway, next part. I have a cube. How did the cube get made? Well, everything I'm doing is being kept track of down here in the history line. And the first thing I did in my history was I made a sketch, and you can see it there, sketch. The second thing I did was I extruded it. And what happened when I was doing that is it kept track of it in my browser tree. Up here, if I click this arrow, I can see I have one sketch underneath my sketches, and I have one body underneath my bodies. Now, I kind of purposefully made a little mistake here. I know that I'm going to be making 2 cubes. And to get 2 objects to work in Fusion, we call them components in Fusion, we should be setting up from the get-go something called components. So up at the top of your browser tree, you're going to right-click on this heading, and you're going to go create a component, new component. You're going to call the component cube A. Okay. Now, these sketches belong to cube A. I'm going to call this thing cube A, and the body belongs to cube A. I want them to be underneath cube A, so they are associated with that cube. The problem is I should have started with the actual cube and started drawing on it, cube A, but I didn't. So I'm going to fix that now. I'm going to go to the very top here, and I'm going to activate this part of my browser tree, which is my main project. And if I hover over this button at the end, it says activate. Now, with it activated, I can see everything I've done in my project so far down here at the bottom of the screen. The last thing I did was I made the component cube A, but it should have been the first thing I did. So what I'm going to do is click on it and hold and drag it back to the beginning of time. So I just sort of went back in time. And then I would like these sketches and bodies to be associated with cube A, so grab this sketch, click and hold, and drag it underneath cube A. There I go. I now have underneath cube A the sketch and the body that made cube A. Notice what I can do now is I can collapse all those sketches and bodies with this arrow, and I can also, with this eyeball, turn my cube on and off. Make it visible, make it invisible. That's cube A. Let's make cube B, but we'll be smarter about it this time. We'll right-click on the main project, we'll create a new component as a starting point, and we'll call this cube B. I'll move that out of the way so you can see it. B. Okay, there we go. So I've got the cube B. Now, as soon as you make it a component, it becomes the active component. The active component is the one you're drawing on or you're trying to create. Cube A is no longer active, so it got ghosted out. And I can even turn it off if I want. If it's in my way, I'll just turn it off and I won't even have it. So let's draw a new cube, same as before. Make a sketch, make it on the top. Let's make a rectangle, center rectangle. Click the center, drag it out. 2, tab 2. Enter, I'm going faster. Click extrude on your keyboard, pull it up, make it a 2, enter. I now have another cube. It is cube B, and I can control it by turning it on and off, and all of its sketches and all of its bodies went beneath cube B because it was active when I drew it. Okay, if you start getting any sketches or any bodies that are outside of your components, they are basically orphaned. They do not belong to a component, and that happens when you've got the project active and you're starting to draw. You don't want to do that. Okay, so I have 2 cubes. I'm going to turn them both on. Where's my 2 cubes? Where are they? Oh, because I drew them both on the origin and I drew them both exactly the same way, they're on top of each other. So watch. Click, hold, drag. Now I have 2. They are free to move. They are not connected to each other in any way. If I orbit, I can orbit around them. That's kind of fun. The last move we're going to do is we're going to teach you how to join something together. I'd like these 2 cubes to join. So actually it won't be the last move. Before I join them, I'm going to show you how I made them different colors. So to make them different colors, which is just kind of fun, go up under Modify, go to Appearance. Once you get the Appearance menu up and running, you can scroll down here, and I have the Paint menu open by clicking on it, and I grabbed a blue, and I dropped it on that one, and I grabbed and dragged a yellow, and I dropped it on that one. So that's how I got the colors. So once I'm done with that, I can close this menu. There I've got my colors. Okay, as I said, my last move is I'm going to stick these together. You can't assemble just by dragging and trying to connect. There's no connection between these until you make it. So under Assemble up here, there's a quick shortcut to the most commonly used one, but you can also click and get to the various ones that you would like. There's various methods of assembly. We're just going to do this one called Joint, and we're just going to make sure the motion is rigid. There's various ones, we'll get to it later. And we're going to just, once it's rigid, we're just going to pick one and attach it to the other. But notice when I hover on one, it's asking me for my first component pick. When I hover on one, I get to choose a location on it. So let's just try picking the middle here, and like that. And then what happens if I pick the middle of this one? Oh, it flipped one over and put it on the other. And if I say OK, there it is, they're joined together, they're locked. But what if I made a mistake? Well, over here I now have a joints menu, and if I expand it, this is the joint I made. And if I right click on it, I can edit that joint. And by the way, anything is editable at any time. You don't have to necessarily redo it, you just edit it. So in this case, I put them center on center and that locked them together. What if I start sliding one of these arrows? And then I push OK. Look, now they're locked in that position with an offset from where the middle. They're no longer on the middle. If I go back to Edit, they are offset by a certain distance, and you can see the distance here in Y. That was the Y direction. Let's try offsetting them this way. So I've offset this 1 inch in that direction, and maybe we'll do -1 in that direction to keep it nice and even. So I put -1 in one direction and 1 in the other, and they're locked together in that position now. So locking things together or assembling components is what we're after here. And so hopefully at this point you can show me where you're at. And you need to be able to show me they're all set up like this. You have a joint, you have a cube A and a cube B, they're colored, they're locked together, and you can manipulate them at your will. Zoom in, zoom out, pan, and rotate. We can't really go any farther until you have these things. So good luck. Hopefully you accomplished it. Call me over when you get her done.